Hello and welcome to the podcast Shedding Candlelight on cryptids, hauntings, mythology, and more. If it is weird, we are talking about it. This is your host, Donna, and I have a haunted story for you today that is most definitely weird. Instead of starting at the beginning, though, we are going to jump into the middle of this paranormal tale where the ancient Hebrew Dybbuk spirit lore had a moment that made it famous. And all thanks to a clever writer who also just happened to own a furniture refinishing business. In 2001 or possibly 2003, because when lore is based on made up stuff, it is never easy to keep the real timeline straight. But sometime in the early 2000s, a man named Kevin Mannis was at the yard sale of an attorney in Portland, Oregon, where an antique wine cabinet caught his eye. Mr. Mannis bought this cabinet and immediately began working to restore the box, while also writing a creative backstory for this splendid antique. If you are watching the video version of today's episode, I'll have a picture of this box on the screen. But if you don't have the visual, imagine any standard two-door cabinet, maybe something you'd find in your kitchen, only this is a freestanding cabinet made to be a portable wet bar. It's crafted from dark wood and measures in inches, 12.5 by 7.5 by 16.25. Now imagine opening the double doors of this cabinet to find 4 round loops attached to the back side of each door, stacked 2 on top and 2 on the bottom. These round loops were designed to hold bottles of wine or liquor. While this box did not come with alcohol when Kevin Mannis bought it, when he later sold the box, he did endow it with a few extras, though still no alcohol. What Mannis gave to this box was character. On the back, he carved a mysterious message in Hebrew. Inside, he placed what he describes as a small granite statue engraved and gilded with Hebrew letters that spell out the word shalom. These two things, the mysterious carved message on the back of the box and the engraved granite statue inside of it, were confirmed in 2021 by Mr. Kevin Mannis himself to be signature creations of his. However, when he sold this box back in 2003, there were a few other items inside. I'm not sure if any of these items were inside of the wine cabinet when he bought it, because you see the story of the Dybbuk box that was included in Mr. Mannis's eBay listing when he put this cabinet up for auction was a complete fabrication. Mannis named this box and wrote an entire elaborate fictional backstory for it. This backstory is what he posted in the description of the cabinet when he put it up for sale on eBay. And in this tall tale of a listing, he claimed that all of the items mentioned in the listing, including the ones we now know he created himself, were inside of the box or carved into it when he bought it. The extra items were 1 1925 U.S. wheat penny, 1 1928 U.S. wheat penny, 1 small lock of blonde hair bound with string, 1 small lock of black-brown hair bound with string, 1 dried rosebud, 1 golden wine cup, and 1 very strange black cast iron candlestick holder with octopus legs. These items did convey with the box, along with Mannis's handmade granite statue and the mysterious message he carved onto the back of the box. But the best thing that he sold with his box was his cleverly written paranormal tale. Mannis started out his rather brazen eBay listing by saying that all of the events described could be verified with copies of hospital records, and sworn affidavits, items he would generously be including in the cell of the wine cabinet. Now, because this listing was long before he came out with the truth of the Dybbuk Box and that it was a paranormal hoax of his own creation, his listing gave the alternate origin story. Mannis claiming in this original listing that he bought the cabinet at the estate auction of a woman who had passed away at the age of 103. This woman was born in Poland, where she lived until she was sent to a Nazi concentration camp during World War II. She survived this camp by escaping with some other prisoners and eventually ended up in Spain, where she acquired the small wine cabinet, which ended up being only one of 3 items that she later brought with her when she immigrated to the United States. In his tall tale, Mannis then says the granddaughter of this woman, who was the one overseeing the estate sale, came up to him saying, "Oh, I see you got the Dybbuk box." He looked at the little wine cabinet he'd just purchased and asked her what a Dybbuk box was. The granddaughter didn't seem to know exactly, but told Mannis that her grandmother called it a Dybbuk box and kept it in her sewing room, always shut and set up in a place that was out of reach, telling her granddaughter that the box was never, ever to be opened. When this fictional granddaughter inquired about what was inside the wine cabinet, the grandmother spit 3 times through her fingers, a custom of Jewish tradition where when something especially good or especially evil is seen or heard, the person doing the seeing or the hearing will spit 3 times. Or in our more modern, civilized world, they simply say, "Poo, poo, poo." Because spitting is gross. But the spitting 3 times is because 3 is the first odd number after 1, and it's historically thought to be mystical and full of magic, the power of 3. So therefore, if you witness or hear something bad, you spit 3 times. And in this grandmother's case, through your fingers in order to keep the same kind of bad thing from happening to you. Spitting 3 times also shields you from the dreaded evil eye, where someone's dirty looks can manifest and harm you. But ultimately, spitting 3 times or saying poo, 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 if you're a modern human, will protect you from evil spirits. This fictional grandmother instructed her equally fictional granddaughter to bury the box with her. But Mannis could not have that, or else he would have no story. So his made-up estate seller made up a reason about Orthodox Jewish burial rules so the box could be at this fictional estate sale instead of entombed with grandma. In his long-winded eBay listing, Mannis went on to say that he offered to open the box with the granddaughter since she'd never known what was inside of the cabinet. But the woman declined, saying she did not want to dishonor her grandmother by now opening what she'd always been forbidden to look inside. He then offered to let the woman keep the box for sentimental reasons, but the woman insisted he bought the box and it was now all his. Still, he persisted, letting her know that he didn't want his money back and he'd just leave the box there for her. She then yelled at him and began to cry, saying he made a deal and that she wanted him to leave with the box. So he did. He took the cabinet to his store where he sold pieces of furniture that he'd refinished, and he walked the box down into the basement where his workshop was. with the intention of refinishing the cabinet so he could give it to his mother as a birthday gift. Shortly thereafter, he went back upstairs, opened his shop for the day, and then left one of his employees in charge of the store while he went out to run some errands. This employee was a young woman who had been working for him for 2 years, and a mere half hour after he left her alone in the shop, she called him, hysterical and screaming that someone was downstairs in the basement, cursing and breaking glass. The worst part of this poor woman's experience, though, was the fact that she couldn't get out of the building. She told Mr. Mannis in his detailed, made up story that the iron security gates and all the emergency exits were locked, and that she was trapped inside with the madman in the workshop. Before he could tell her to call 911, his cell phone died. All he could do was race back to his shop where he was able to get through those locked doors to find his employee curled up in the corner in his office, sobbing because on her own, she just never thought to call 911. Mannis finds her and then he runs to the basement, getting hit with an overpowering odor of cat urine as he reaches the bottom of the stairs. He attempts to turn on the lights, but they don't come on. He must have had a flashlight, though, because the rest of his story says that the sounds of glass breaking that the saleswoman had heard were from 9 incandescent light bulbs that had been broken in their sockets and 10 4-feet long fluorescent tubes that were now shattered on the basement floor. As his employee had reported, all of the doors to the building were locked when he arrived, but as he searched the building now, he could find no intruder. While he was hunting for them, his longtime employee left and never again returned to his store. About a month later, in his fictional story, Mannis relayed the date as October 31st, 2001. His mother came to his shop, a shop whose lease would be terminated without cause on this very same day. But for now, it's open and he presents his mother with the box. She admires it while he goes off to make a phone call. Less than 5 minutes later, one of his employees runs into his office saying that something is wrong with his mom. When he reaches his mother, he finds her sitting in a chair beside the cabinet, her face blank and expressionless. Yet tears are streaming down her cheeks. He can't get his mother to respond to him, so they call for an ambulance, and in the end, his mother had suffered a stroke that caused partial paralysis and even left her unable to speak for a period of time, during which she would communicate by pointing at letters to spell out her words. The next day, when he asked her how she was doing, she spelled out, "No gift." At first, he thought she was rebuking him for not giving her a birthday gift, so he reminded her about the box. She then grew very upset and spelled out, "Hate gift." He laughed off his mother's clear despair, something my own son has never done, at least not to my face. I've called him a few times lately with a sob story that he politely listens to before ever so gently telling me everything is going to be okay. But Mr. Kevin Mannis, the storyteller, wrote that he was a little slow on the uptake and just wasn't connecting these strange events with his haunted wine box. So after dismissing his cute little mom for being upset, he re-gifted the cabinet, this time giving it to his sister, who kept it for a week before giving it back to him, complaining that the doors to the cabinet would not stay closed. Being a good brother, he checked it out and determined there was nothing wrong with the box or the doors. So he once again did what all good brothers do. He presented the box to another family member, this time his brother, who also gave it back to him, saying it smelled too strongly of jasmine flowers. The brother's wife, though, argued that it did not smell of flowers, it smelled like cat urine. Now, Kevin Mannis is persistent. He bought this haunted box to be a gift, and by golly, he is determined to give it away. His next victim is his very own girlfriend. Now, she was smarter than all of the others because she did not simply give this box back to him. Only 2 days after he gave her this diabolical gift, she asked him to sell it for her. See, clever she is. The very same day that she asked Mannis to sell this box, he sold it to a nice middle-aged couple. 3 days later, he found the cabinet sitting at the front door of his shop with a note that read, "This has a bad darkness." Mannis didn't know what the middle-aged couple meant by this note, and because the story version of him is clueless, Mannis now decides the box is a gift to himself. He takes it home with him, and that very night he has a nightmare, one that repeats itself over and over. In this horrible dream, Mannis would be with a person he knew, someone he trusted, but as he looked at them, they would change into what he said could only be described as a gruesome, demonic-looking hag. A hag that would beat, quote, "the living tar out of me." On several occasions after having these dreams, Mannis woke up to find bruises and marks all over his body. But even so, he never connected his misfortune to the box. Not until the people he kept gifting this possessed cabinet to came over to spend the night at his house. Mannis's sister, brother, and the brother's wife were all gathered around the dining room table the morning after their family sleepover when his sister complained about the horrible nightmare she'd had the night before, saying she'd previously had the same dream. She went on to perfectly describe the nightmare Mannis himself had been having. The brother and his wife, chilled to the core, said they too had the same dream. The night before and previously during the brief window of time when the curious cabinet was in their home. The same way the sister had the nightmares only when sleeping under the same roof as the box. Mannis's girlfriend also had a nightmare about the hag when she'd accepted the gift into her home. After putting his head together with his siblings and figuring out that the box was responsible for their nightmares, things only got worse for Kevin Mannis. He started seeing shadow creatures in his peripheral vision, and he wasn't the only one. Visitors in his home would see them too. So Mannis put the box outside in a fancy storage unit, but was jolted awake in the middle of the night by the sound of the fire alarm going off in that storage unit. He went outside, ripped the doors open, and found no fire, no smoke. All he got was hit with the smell of cat urine again, a smell that was inside of his house when he got back there. For the sake of ending his story on a tantalizing note, he then says he turned around, marched back to the storage unit, and retrieved the box, bringing it back inside of his house. Yep, nonsensical thing to do in real life, but it makes perfect sense when you are writing fiction. So this is what fictional Kevin did. He then spent some time doing research on the box, sadly falling asleep to only once again have his nightmare. He woke up around 4:30 a.m. to the feeling of someone breathing on his neck. All around him, the house smelled like jasmine. As Manus pulled his eyes open, he caught sight of a huge shadow of a thing lopping down the hallway away from him. Super creepy, but not enough to make Manus destroy this cursed box. In his eBay listing, he said he was afraid to destroy the cabinet because he didn't have an understanding of what it was. He thought that if he destroyed the cabinet, whatever was inside of it, this evil thing that seemed to have come with the box, might just stay there in his house. So he turned to eBay, where he heard there were people who understood these kinds of things, saying in his listing, quote, "If you are one of these people, please, please, please buy this cabinet and do whatever you do with a thing like this. Help me," end quote. During the time that the box was listed for sale on eBay, Manus updated the listing to say that on Friday, the 13th of June, he came home to find all 10 fish in his freshwater aquarium were dead, which he hoped was only a coincidence and not actually the work of the demon in the box. The haunted wine cabinet sold, of course, because we, the people, love the macabre. But the new owner sold the box, claiming they too had nightmares and bad luck after buying the cabinet. And from here, the legend does grow. The box, according to its owners, is responsible for all manner of strange phenomena that only began in their lives after they purchased the cabinet. One of these owners was the director of the Museum of Osteopathic Medicine in Kirksville, Missouri, a man named Jason Haxton. He purchased the box and shortly thereafter started experiencing strange physical phenomena, such as breaking out in hives, coughing up blood, and developing welts all over his body. Paxton employed the help of a rabbi in order to seal the box. Then he placed the sealed cabinet inside of a special military box and buried it, keeping the location a secret. Haxton also created a website called DybbukBox.com, where he consolidated all of the claims about the cabinet. The website received hundreds of thousands of hits, further perpetuating this made-up story of fiction writer Kevin Mannis as fact. It was either Haxton or Mannis who sold the rights to this fictional story, hopefully Mannis, since he is the original creator, but these rights were sold to a Hollywood production company, and in 2012, a film based on this Dybbuk Box story was released, drawing even more attention to Mannis's cleverly executed hoax. This film is called The Possession. I've never seen it and most likely never will because I am a big whiny baby when it comes to scary stuff. Just ask my daughter-in-law. Vampires and werewolves are fine, but hauntings and demons, nope. It's too real, and I already have enough spooky stuff happening around me that I am not inviting anything else in. Poo, poo, poo. There's this movie. I don't know the name of it because I've never actually watched it, but my husband has. And on 2 of those occasions, I've looked up from my crossword puzzle to catch the end of this thing, and it literally makes me want to pluck my eyes out. It is so, so creepy. I guess the plot of the movie is this guy is being haunted by some female. I'm not sure if she's an ex of his or what. When I first looked up from my puzzle, I made the mistake of asking my husband why the girl was on the guy's back and like all wrapped around him. And he said, she's a ghost. And the whole point of the movie is the guy going through all the stuff, trying to get rid of the haunting. And that very last scene is showing you his efforts were in vain. The ghost is still there, literally attached to him. No, no, no. Someone in my life has me convinced that there are things attached to me. And this is why I can't deal with hauntings. They are fascinating and I want to hear about them. I want to read about them. But there's something about watching it that it's just too much. I can't do it, which is why I do not watch Ghost Adventures with Zach Baggins. I tried it out a few times because I do like some of the ghost hunting shows, primarily because nothing much ever happens. But Zach is a performer, and I don't care if every single second of it is fake, it haunts my thoughts. So I do not watch any of his stuff. But thanks to Mr. Haxton, Zach Baggins now has possession of the Dybbuk Box, and it's part of his growing collection of oddities on display in his haunted museum in Las Vegas. I've heard Baggins is related to self-proclaimed demonologist Ed and Lorraine Warren. I spent about a minute trying to fact check that, and I didn't see anything saying the claim was true or not. I've heard it presented as fact a few times, though, and I can't remember where. So I thought I'd mention it because it's either a rumor being repeated or it's true. Feel free to confirm or deny that on your own. You can also decide how you feel about the fact that in 2018, after rapper Post Malone came into contact with the Dybbuk Box, his fans decided that the musician's streak of bad luck was due to the haunted cabinet. But I just told you that the person who put this box on the map, claiming it to be the home of a malicious Dybbuk spirit, admitted to making up the entire story. In fact, back in 2015, Kevin Mannis, the box's original creator, posted the following on the Haunt ME Facebook page. I am the original creator of the story of the Dybbuk Box, which appeared as one of my eBay posts back in 2003. How about this? If you or anyone else can find any reference to a Dybbuk box anywhere in history prior to my eBay post, I'll pay you $100,000 and tattoo your name on my forehead. Sounds to me like he's pretty sure his box is a paranormal hoax. In 2021, he even went on to tell writer Charles Moss that the box was not only his creation, both in design and story, but that the story he wrote for the cabinet did exactly what he intended for it to do. It became an interactive horror story happening in real time, evolving with new elements being added over the years, which keeps the story he wrote relevant and interesting. Furthermore, according to skeptical author Brian Dunning, the whole idea of the box being inhabited by a Dybbuk is nonsensical because these spirits do not inhabit objects. They possess the living. So why then have the owners of this box and those merely coming into contact with it reported evil befalling them? Author Alan S. Mott says that people embrace these types of stories because they tap into our own fears. Chris French, head of the Anomalistic Psychology Research Unit at Goldsmiths College, said the box's owners were, quote, already primed to be looking out for bad stuff. If you believe you have been cursed, then inevitably you explain the bad stuff that happens in terms of what you perceive to be the cause. End quote. So, what do you think? Are owners and contactees simply manifesting their own bad luck and nightmares? Is their fear so singularly focused that they are unwittingly creating a tulpa? Or could people be attracting spirits, Dybbuk or otherwise? Encyclopedia Mythica describes the Dibbuk as a disembodied spirit possessing a living body that belongs to another soul. They go on to say that once the spirit possesses the person, they can then talk from that person's mouth. The term Dibbuk comes from the Hebrew word Dybbuk, meaning a case of attachment. This word is derived from a verb that means to adhere or to cling, and it first appears in literature during the 16th century. In Jewish mythology, a Dybbuk isn't a demon, but a malicious possessing spirit believed to be the dislocated soul of a dead person. This dislocated soul will have unfinished business, which causes it to inhabit a living body, a host that it will leave once it has accomplished its goal, or after being exorcised and forced to leave. And because no ancient myth can be complete without just a dab of misogyny, Dybbuks are traditionally male spirits who possess women on the eve of their weddings, entering the women through their nether regions, which correlates to the Dybbuk then being described in psychological literature as a hysterical syndrome, complete with reports of rabbis telling possessed individuals to see a psychiatrist. Which isn't bad advice, but maybe the woman isn't possessed. Maybe there's a reason she's flipping out on the night before her wedding, like she doesn't want to marry the man she's being forced to marry. I mean, just a wild guess. If you would like to be as cynical as I am and suck all of the fun out of these topics, read Dybbuk's and Jewish Women in Social History, Mysticism, and Folklore by Dr. Rachel Elior. Her last name is Elior. I'm sure I'm not pronouncing that correctly. You can grab this book of hers on Amazon, and I will put a link in the show notes for you. But back to my original thought, do you guys think people have the ability to attract negative spirits? I do. I think we can manifest all sorts of things in our lives, but the question is, are they real or figments of our imagination? Our minds are indeed powerful tools. And in the folklore, Dybbuks do not inhabit inanimate objects, but that doesn't mean that they can't. It also doesn't mean that Kevin Mannis didn't manifest a malicious spirit that is now attached to his box. I've personally heard stories where people had truly bizarre things happening in their lives, even their children suddenly raging out like they were dosed with steroids. These people would seek different forms of spiritual help, said spiritual help guiding them to an object in their house that was cursed in some way, even being said to house evil entities. These people claim they removed the object, some of them destroying it, but others giving it away because I guess they have frenemies that they hold dear, or they read Kevin Mannis's story and decided everyone they love should suffer with them. But the once haunted people say that after getting rid of the object, everything in their house goes back to normal. Some of them talk about a thickness to the air, like they could just tell something was present in their house. I have felt that kind of heaviness and something a little worse. If I ever feel the something a little worse again, I would like to say that I will run fast and hard in the other direction, But I know as well as I'm sitting here that I would be drawn to that presence like a moth to a flame. I don't even think it has anything to do with curiosity because I would rather listen to your stories than experience any of my own. But there's something in us, and I think it's probably our spirits that push us beyond our own understanding. However, I will not be going to the Haunted Museum anytime soon because I also think I would touch the box. Because I mean, how could you go there and not touch probably every single thing? And then afterward, I would totally blame all of the bad stuff in my life on the box to the point that I would then manifest a demon. And look, I did an episode early on. I think it was like my second episode or something. And I was being really silly about not saying the D word, but I'm also super serious about that. Guard your minds, people, and let's bring back spitting. Not between your fingers, though. You need those fingers clean and dry to push my buttons. Like, subscribe, and rate the show, please, and thank you. Send your stories to leadonabooks@gmail.com. My website is leadonabooks.com. I do have a post office box, and it is listed in the show notes for you. But if you send me haunted objects, I am going to evil eye you. So beware and watch your nether regions, ladies.